Welcome everyone. We got there in the end. For those of you who have just joined us, sorry for the slight delay. I'm in Brisbane. I'm working on a biosecurity response with a bunch of dog handler teams up here, and yes, Steve was trying to. We're both trying to log in at the same time and make it happen, but we got there in the end. I don't know how we got there, but we are there. So for those of you that haven't met me before or don't know who I am, my name is Ryan. Hi, thanks for joining me tonight. My full-time profession is I'm an animal trainer, but more and more I end up training people more than anything. So right now I'm contracted by a few different state government agencies in Australia, as well as a lot of zoos and aquariums around the world, more and more to teach people about animal behavior. So not just dogs, but a lot of marine life, a lot of land-based animals and birds, and even invertebrates as well. So it's something that, yes, I absolutely love doing. It's a personal passion, but also something that I've done professionally for 20 years. I've got a bunch of different qualifications in that area, and something that I think I am naturally pretty adept at doing. And there is an element of training animals, in particular training dogs, where there is absolutely a science. Anyone can learn the science, but there is also very much an art in the application of it. So tonight, what this is about, and I'm very humbled and blown away by how many people have joined it up, because I just sort of came up with an idea to do this because we were supposed to do a few workshops this year, and due to some health issues that I had, I just wasn't able to do them. And I really enjoy this part of chatting to pet dog owners about just really easy solutions that come easy to me. That and the way I think I explain it might, it probably reinforces messages that a lot of other dog trainers would say, but I have a perhaps unique take on it that might help you see the advice in a new light for your dog. So I think that's where the art of dog training and the art of people training becomes handy, because you can learn it in so many different ways. So the first topic that I want to talk about, when it comes to keeping a pet dog happy, keeping it safe, keeping it in your home, is making sure that your management of the dog when you're not home is the best it can possibly be. It's the safest it can be. It's as well as being stimulating and comfortable. The biggest take-home message that I still do, Emma, I still see the occasional pet dog client. I love doing it, but usually, I would say 95% of the problem cases that I see, there is something major in terms of the structure of the house or the backyard or the front yard or the living quarters that we need to change in order to allow the dog to truly calm down or to truly be in a relaxed or a happy state. So, what are some of my suggestions? Well, don't always assume that more space, and particularly a greater vision over, from a veranda over a big property, is a better thing for a lot of dogs. The specific most common incident where I see a lot of reactivity, a lot of anxiety, a lot of obsessive compulsive behaviors occurring is when a dog is typically overlooking a busy street, a busy road, or even a parkland that has intermittent traffic of people, where the dog feels as though it needs to be on guard all the time. Now, dogs being on guard and guarding properties is a wonderful and beautiful thing. I love having a Malinois. I've always had some form of shepherd that acts as a guard dog and lets me know when someone pulls up. I don't need to keep an eye on the front gate. Raff will bark and let me know. But he only barks when a car pulls into the driveway, or he only barks when someone's standing out at the front gate saying hello. And it's a happy, loud, obvious bark. And it's a very natural thing for the dog to do. And I'm able to call him back and say, good boy, thanks, mate. On your bed, stay there while I invite the people in. But a dog that rehearses barking at the postman, barking at people walking by, push bikes, cars, other dogs walking by all day, red control to be able to bark and then come away from the bark and lay on their bed and happily welcome someone into their property. Now, Steve, I'm just getting a notification here saying my internet connection is unstable. So let me know if it gets glitchy, and I'll swap over to a hotspot. So the solutions that I often say when it comes to management for people, and this will come up again when I talk about separation anxiety too, is I'm a big fan of allowing your dog access to part of, if not a lot of, the house. Now, at home, we have a big back deck, and we live most of our lives on the deck. Well, certainly I do, and the kids do most of the time as well. And it feels like part of the home. So when the dogs are on the back deck, they feel like they're in the house with us. But we invite the dogs inside the house. If it's particularly bad weather or I'm going to be out at night, I will allow the dogs access to the house. Some of them, not all of them. But that is often, number one, something that certain people need to let go of. I want the dog to be an outside dog. So, well, if your dog's anxious, reactive, barking at things all day, or demonstrating a whole host of different problem behaviors that lets us know the dog's unhappy, then maybe you need to review the idea of dog. The second thing is, too much space is not a good thing. Okay, so I will often refine the space and say, you know what, when you're not at home, I actually only want the dog to have access to maybe a 20 square meter part of backyard, as well as inside the house. So just enough space to go to the toilet, have a drink, have a stretch, get a bit of sunshine, but also somewhere inside to get out of the weather and feel like I'm part of the house. I am a huge fan of utilizing visual barriers, and this doesn't need to be forever. We have neighbors on one side of our property that have a huge amount of different animals. Where we typically have our puppies a lot of the time at home, we've just put shade cloth up there. So the majority of the time when the puppies are having relaxed time and I'm not supervising them, the view of the goats and the dogs next door and the sheep and the chickens and the people and the kids and stuff it's dialed down. So I utilize just a bit of shade cloth to lower the stimulus of what's happening when I'm not there. So these dogs can't rehearse barking, getting themselves scared, or getting some feedback from the animals next door. And means that when I am at home, I take them into the paddocks where they can see the goats and the sheep and the horses and all that sort of stuff. And I can be there to help them that it's okay. Right. And the final thing is looking at the sound of the environment. Okay. So do you need to consider radios? There's a whole lot of evidence to suggest classical music and reggae is very, very soothing for dogs that are left at home. And this will feed into the anxiety discussion. But what a lot of people want to do is they want to show the dog trainer the problem when there are some really obvious physical solutions or management tools we can set up to prevent the problem from occurring. For those of you that are in Australia, you probably, if you're my age or even a little bit older, you might remember Dr. Harry, who has become a mate of ours over the years. So, he had his show, Harry's Practice. And we used to make jokes about, the Dr. Harry solution would be, my dog barks at the front door, close the front door. Or my dog runs out in the front yard, close the front gate. And, some of Harry's solutions seemed ridiculously obvious. And he says those for a reason, and Harry's been around for 100 years saying that kind of advice because it bloody does work. A lot of it does work. Okay, so I think you get the message. If there's an obvious management solution, such as giving the dog access to their house or preventing access or using shade cloth, I want you to do it, because I can't teach a dog to not bark at people walking past your street or your house using treats, using rewards, or even using corrections if you allow it to happen all day long when you're at work. Right? The training just will not work if the dog's rehearsing the behavior, the undesirable behavior, in the absence of your training. Okay, so Second concept I want you to think about is that a dog that knows how to play fetch and can settle in a crate is almost never found in a pound. Okay, now dog trainers, particularly detection dog trainers that work on explosives and work on narcotics, are always on the lookout for a 12-month-old dog that loves chasing a ball and that can settle in a crate. Now, the reason for that is a dog that has toy drive or ball drive is joyful, playful, generally willing to train, generally fit, and has something that we can work with, i.e. a ball, to teach them a myriad of wonderful different behaviors. A dog that can settle in a crate has dwell time, can sleep, can learn rapidly, can go out and do an explosive training session, then go back to a crate, settle down and think. Now, as a professional dog trainer who trains dogs for government agencies, that's pretty much all I look for. I say to people, when people go to me, I'm going to buy my first working line Springer or my first Malinois or working line Labrador, what do I do? And I say, make it chase a ball, make sure it can settle in a crate. They are the two most functional, usable things that a trainer can work with. Now, I use the ball as a broad, very, very broad term for a dog that likes to play games, and games that we, the owners, can utilize to bond and to train and to learn with. So it doesn't specifically need to be a ball, but you must. I don't care what breed of dog you got or how old it is. If it's a 12-year-old Basset Hound, I still want you to do it. If it's a 15-year-old Great Pyrenees, I still want you to do it. They must play with toys. So some of the other ways that my dogs might play with toys. Some of my dogs just like to parade a toy. So when they find something in an airport or a mailroom or on a ship or out in the bush, they don't like a big game of fetch, but what they do love, they might have a special toy. It might be a duck or a squeaky chicken. One of the dogs I was working with today, she has one of those honky chickens that she likes. And the reward is, while the dog's next to us, we say yes, throw the toy up, she captures it and just dances around, squeaking it, happy as Larry. All right. Another very, very similar game that works in the same part of the dog's brain is tug of war. Okay. In certain parts of the world, tug of war is considered as a dangerous game. It's even technically outlawed, depending on how you play it in certain states in Australia. That's all due to outdated science, but tug of war is just as good. In some respects, I like it more than a dog that plays fetch. But the dog must, it doesn't matter how it looks, but the dog must be able to engage with a human and a toy. Okay, so I think you get the message there. So how do we utilize those toys? Well, find what toys your dogs like and work out how they like to play games with those toys, whether it be parading them, whether it be retrieving it to you, whether it be through tug of war. It doesn't really matter, but I want you to, in informal time, okay, over days, weeks, experiment with different toys. Buy cheap, crappy ones. Buy really nice, firm tennis balls. Buy toys that have different weights, okay? Scout, my Cocker Spaniel, she likes two styles of toys. One is a Frisbee, loves the Frisbee, but that's not that functional a lot of the time. And the other one is she likes weight toys. She likes toys that weigh approximately 350 to 500 grams. That's how nerdy I get on this sort of stuff. I work out that's the weight of the toy. That's what's important to her. A standard cheap tennis ball, not interested. She will retrieve it if I ask her to. It's not a naturally enjoyable experience for her. Okay, so the weight of the toy. And if you think about that for a working line Cocker Spaniel, 300 to 500 grams, even up to a kilo, she quite likes those toys. That's the weight of a natural prey item like a rabbit that a Cocker Spaniel has been bred for 700 years to retrieve. Okay, so the games that we play with toys are really activating part of what we call the dog's canine predatory sequence. It makes the dog feel powerful. It makes the dog feel cheeky. It loosens up. They boost endorphins, and they are bonding with you through it. You deliver the toy. You are part of the game. Now, the final catch to it is once you work out you've got the ultimate toy that your dog loves, you know how they like you just throw it. You've got to work it and build it up in a really, really, really quiet location. The biggest mistake most people make is they find this toy, they play a bit of fetch with it around the house, and they go, great, now I'm going to the beach. I'm going to play fetch at the beach with 50 other dogs around, with waves, with seagulls. And they ring me and they go, Ryan, the dog doesn't want to play fetch anymore. Okay, you've got to build it up gradually. Set some rules, introduce perhaps a cue that means, yes, I want you to chase the ball, or yes, I want you to bite the tug toy. So I typically say yes before I deliver the toy to the dog, or yes before I let them bite the tug toy. And so I layer in just a couple of lighthearted rules around, now you can bite it, now you need to give it. I might teach the give with some treats. I might teach the give with 2 toys. I don't really want you to overthink it. It is meant to be fun. And I want you to build it up in a very quiet location for about 3 weeks. Okay. I typically work in the exact same space for 3 weeks until I have that dog going, this game is so much fun. I can't wait till we play that game. I do it for about anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 minutes every second day for 3 weeks. All right. So think about that. 30 seconds to 3 minutes every second day for 3 weeks before I change anything. Okay, that's for me the optimum number of repetitions where the dog is still learning and developing it, but you aren't overdoing it. That is another common thing that people will do, is they overdo it. Okay, they go, oh, the dog loves playing fetch, and they play fetch 25 times a day for a week straight, and the dog pulls up with sore ACLs and loses interest in the game. Okay, so don't overdo it. Make sure the game that you are playing is safe and suitable for you and for the dog. If you've got dodgy elbows and you have a 40-kilo Rottweiler, maybe don't start teaching it tug of war. Okay, or if you've got an arthritic, 15-year-old border collie, maybe don't teach it a crazy game of fetch on slippery concrete. So just think about what's going to be safe and suitable for you and for the dog, but build it up over 3 weeks, introduce a couple of rules, a couple of cues, and then introduce a slightly more distracting environment. So maybe you go from inside the house to your backyard. You might even, and I do this all the time, I ask my neighbors, instead of just going straight into a national park with a conservation dog, I ask my neighbors, hey, I've got a dog that's pretty good, but I want to try it in your paddock because it's fenced in and it's a bit different. So I'll go in there and I practice my recalls and practice my fetch. So find some friends, find some relatives, and train in their backyard, and just build up before you start going and playing fetch at an area, an off-leash exercise area, or playing tug in a shopping center or something like that with your dog. Okay, I hope I have drilled in the absolute importance of play. It is my, straight after management, play comes into it. Now, I will break down anxiety, but I just wanted to, and the crate training stuff, but I just wanted to make sure that I have ticked all the things. Of course, if you are not good at playing with toys, or you don't find, perhaps you're not sure how to best engage your dog, there is one piece of equipment. I don't own any stocks in this industry, but there is one piece of equipment I'd like you to buy if you don't think you're good at getting a dog to play with toys, and that is a flirt pole. There's so many different versions of them online. And if you are unfamiliar with what a flirt pole is, it is generally a stick or a pole that can be anywhere from sort of 50 centimeters long to a meter long, with a bit of rope on the end. Again, the bit of rope could be anywhere from 1 meter long to about 3 or 4 meters long, and then generally something fluffy on the end of it. I like to go for things that are leather or blue rope, and I typically try and make those toys flap around on the ground like a dying fish and then slide across the floor. It's a very popular kind of cat toy type idea, but it's built in a more robust manner for dogs. And we get the dog to chase them, miss them, bite them, tug on them, whatever. It doesn't really matter, but it is a really nice way to introduce toy play to your dog. And I would suggest, again, 30 seconds to a couple of minutes. That's all you're doing with it. And once you work out how the dog likes to play with a flirt pole, you can generally transfer that over to a game like tug or fetch or both. My Malinois Rafa, who is, my probably most diverse dog, he will play fetch like his life depends on it. He'll play tug like he's got to, survive. He will catch toys and just dance around, squeaking them in his mouth. I can hide toys and make him find them, and all of those games are equally reinforcing to him. He thinks they are fantastic. Okay, on to anxiety. Separation anxiety is typically one of the top reasons why dogs end up having a cascading effect of other problems. Okay, if the dog is unable to settle when it is left alone, then we typically see it flow on to other things such as on-lead reactivity, dog reactivity, resource guarding, barking, howling, urinating inside the house. Separation anxiety is, one of the number one behavioral problems that ends up, having dogs in the pound or surrendered or something like that, or medicated as well. And it's one of those topics where dog trainers can be polarized by it, and veterinary behaviorists can too. And statistically, there's been papers written out to suggest that separation anxiety or separation distress, depending on the nuances for how you interpret those words, is expected or common in up to around about 25 to 30% of pet dogs. And, to me, the way I treat that, or I take that, is that if the dogs are left alone, they will display negative welfare indicators. Now, with those statistics, given the number of dogs I've owned in my life and I currently own, you would expect that right now in my house, there may be 3 to 5 dogs that can't be left alone, that bark and howl when they are separated. And the reality is I haven't, to my knowledge, ever owned and don't currently own a dog that displays separation anxiety, which makes me believe or inconsistencies in how the dog is managed really dictates how much that separation anxiety manifests, much more than genetics do, because I've had a wide variety of genetically very different dogs that have been rehomed, dogs that I've gotten from pounds, and a variety of well-bred dogs that none of which have any problems being left alone for anywhere from 5 minutes to 10 hours overnight in a kennel or in a veterinary space. It's not to say that I don't acknowledge that dogs are social obligates. It is just that you can build some resilience into any dog to make them capable of being left alone for a sensible period of time. Now, here are the caveat. You can't get a puppy such as a English Staffy, a Cavalier Spaniel, so dogs that are bred to be very, very attached to people, very dependable, sitting on your lap, getting pats, being inside, being mooched over, and work 15-hour days in the city and get home and take them for a 15-minute walk. Okay, that won't work. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm more saying I think any dog should be able to be frequently or sporadically left alone for up to 10 hours, providing that they get serious fulfillment. They're allowed inside. They are taught games. They are allowed to play things like tug and fetch. They are exposed to new and novel stimulus every day, and they go for loose lead walks with their owner. Then absolutely any dog should be able to be left alone for 8 to 10 hours on a regular basis. So if you have an anxious dog that does not like being left alone, where do you start? Well, good trainers are great at breaking things down into really, really, really small steps. And that's how I approach anxiety. I'm not a big proponent of utilizing medication for it, but I am not opposed to it. Okay. And there are definitely extreme circumstances where the medication will allow that first little step in the right direction. But I have never seen cases where the medication has completely solved the problem, right? But it can be a useful step in getting towards a appropriate training plan to having that dog left alone. So what I typically do for a dog that has anxiety, much like what we're talking about with our management strategies before, is I try and work out, is there a room, is there a part of the house, or is there a way that I can set up the house that this dog is absolutely stoked, that this dog is so happy with life. Now, again, I think of, there was a TV episode, I don't know if it was Harry or someone else, it was one I saw quite recently where a Labrador, separation anxiety, digging holes in the backyard, barking, chasing possums, displaying all the things that an anxious dog would every time the owners went to work. And all they decided to do was give the dog access to their bedroom, which some people would go, I would never do that. All that dog wanted to do was lay on their bed, and it never, ever, ever barked again or dug a hole. It had access to a yard, so it could go to the toilet if it wanted to. All it wanted to do was to be somewhere comfortable indoors. It was that easy, the solution. And it often is, if you can find a place where the dog is comfortable with. Where that becomes difficult is if your dog has always been with you, always been by your side. You bought it during the pandemic and it's never left your side. You've given it access to watching you while you go to the toilet and while you shower. That's a very difficult set of circumstances. Okay. Again, it's not impossible, but you need to find that very, very small step. Where I might go to is to double back to our first conversation is I might start at crate training, or I might start at something known as a tie-up exercise. The reason that I will go for something like crate training or tie-up exercise is because it is a confined space, or I can create a confined space where I can give it reinforcing value and I can build it up gradually over time. And I can teach a dog how to be left alone in a crate in the lounge room while I move around the lounge room, and I can build from there. Okay, so again, it's about, for anxiety, it's about breaking down to the smallest possible steps. I've absolutely worked with dogs where the first step is leaving it in a room for 7 seconds and then opening the door and coming back in. That's been our building block. So I walk in and out of the lounge room a few times until the dog goes, righto, Ryan and my owner are going in and out of the lounge room and I'm starting to get sleepy on this mat here. The dog falls asleep. We leave the room, close the door, come back in, and that's our building block. We build on it. When you reunite with a dog that has anxiety, make not a big deal about it. When you leave a dog that has anxiety alone, try to leave it with behavioral enrichment or something pleasant to do. Okay, so when you return, don't make a big deal about it. When you're leaving the dog, try and give them something lovely to do as you depart. That's a super abridged version of a very complex topic. Now, the next biggest topic in dog training, where dog trainers, 90% of the dog trainers around the world would make 90% of their revenue, is loose lead walking. Now, similar to fetch and to crate training, I rarely come across a dog in the pound that has a nice loose lead walking or knows how to heel. Okay. It's everything to have a nice walking dog by your side, a dog that doesn't lunge, doesn't drag you down the street, that doesn't put the brakes on. And you'll see a common theme with a lot of the messages that I'm trying to portray tonight, and hopefully that'll help you either achieve some great goals with your dog or squash some problems. But if you want to teach a dog how to walk on a loose lead by your side, you need to break it down into really small steps. You need to start in an extremely boring environment, and you need to teach the dog the skills utilizing food-based rewards of where you want it to be. Okay, so where do I start? Typically in a hallway at home, I teach the dog to walk on my left. Most people do. And there's reasons why, but essentially if a dog walks on your left and as you're approaching other dogs on the street and you verge to the left and the other person verges to the left, the humans walk past each other and you can keep the dogs further apart. A lot of dogs, most dogs, do want a bit of space on the walk until they decide they're interested in another dog. So by you walking on the left and passing people on the left, you're already setting up nice skills. So I start by teaching the dog in my hallway off lead, no lead, that I have heaps of treats in my left hand. And when I'm walking up and down the hallway, if you're on my left-hand side, I'm going to give you treats. It's that easy. This is where we start. Okay. If I can find that exercise to be successful, then I might move on to getting the dog to come and sit by my left-hand side. Some owners find that getting the dog to sit on my left easier than the walking forward and treating. And some people find the inverse easier. It doesn't really matter, but they're my two beginning exercises. I need to teach the dog how to be stationary, sitting by my side, essentially their front legs mirroring my front legs, mirroring my legs, okay? And I need to teach the dog how to walk alongside me and essentially, again, with their front legs, mirror the actions of my front legs. By removing the lead, we remove the temptation to yank the dog back into position, to apply pressure. We free up our hands to utilize treats and make this game reinforcing for your dog. Now, the catch to loose lead walking is, and this is a little bit of the nuance to it, is I've got to find treats that the dog wants, but I don't want to utilize crazy high value food. I don't want to whip a Labrador or a Beagle into a state of high arousal by using barbecue chicken, right? But for something like, say, a Rhodesian Ridgeback or a female Kelpie, which notoriously have low food drive, maybe I do need to start with something like barbecue chicken or warm chicken chunkers or kangaroo mince or something to get a little bit of interest in them. But essentially, I want to utilize food that the dog likes, but doesn't elicit a crazy response from the dog when I'm teaching loose lead walking. Okay, I master walking up and down the hallway with zero distractions, and I start to layer in a cue. Something like heel, walk, whatever it may be, teaching a dog that that's where you want it to be. When you layer in the lead, if you have a history of your dog pulling, this is where you might consider an equipment change. Okay, so regardless of what equipment people use, and I won't go down that rabbit hole tonight, but there is a whole variety of different devices that are claimed to assist with no pull harnesses and halties and whatnot. None of them work if the dog has been successful in pulling on them, in going forwards or lunging at dogs or putting on the brakes. Okay, so if even some of the most heavy-handed equipment, if a dog has a long history of pulling you on it, I typically say chuck it out. I don't have a personal preference that I say you need to use. It all depends on the person, the dog's history, the dog's shape, on what equipment you use. But most of the time with my dogs, if I'm doing it right, I should be able to just do it on a flat collar and a lead. Okay, if I'm layering in the steps slowly enough, I shouldn't need to use a no pull harness. I shouldn't need to use a halty if I do it right. But absolutely, there are times in my life where I have utilized those because I feel like it helps. Just in those instances where the wheels fall off, it helps me regain control a little bit. So I'm not opposed to those things. And if you've had an absolute disaster and your dog's been pulling every day on a flat collar, then for sure, change it up, right? So an equipment change can be the difference between, and I've seen it time and time and time again. Like literally, I hate this dog, Ryan. I'm taking it to the pound tomorrow unless you teach it to walk today on lead because I've broken my hip and he's dragged me down the street. He must learn to walk today. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes an equipment change is all it needs. Okay, so don't jump ahead. Teach it off lead in a zero distraction environment. Teach your dog how to walk beside you. All right. One of my good mates, Mike, one of the exercises he likes doing when people say, you know what, Mike, my dog's ready to go out into the big wide world. They have a dog that has a history of being aggressive on lead and they've been working in controlled settings. And he says, okay, right, now what I want you to do is you got to walk the dog around my facility and your lead is going to be toilet paper. Right? If the dog breaks a toilet paper, he's not ready to go out in the big wide world. But if you can work your dog around my facility on a lead that is made out of toilet paper, then you're ready to go. Now, that's a pretty extreme and hilarious example, but that is the idea. And if I'm utilizing pressure on the lead, I literally want to use 2 fingers. I don't want to be yanking dogs. I don't want to be having dogs do issues to their backs and shoulders and chests and necks and throats and whatnot. I want to be able to utilize 2 fingers. So like I said, with the separation anxiety, it means when we layer in distractions for a dog that has a history of pulling or being reactive, we've got to do it really, really small. We've got to get crazy creative. All right. Some of my best clients will, that have been working with their dogs, will do things such as, Ryan, I live in a really busy apartment complex and I need to teach my dog how to loose lead walk. But as soon as we walk out the front door, it's into stimulus overload. So they wake up at 5 in the morning. They carry the dog down the elevator, pop it in the car. They drive the car to an industrial and they start training in the industrial area. Or they go to a Bunnings car park. They go to a Coles car park. I've utilized all these places myself before where I go, okay, I want to get the dog outside. I can't be working in the hallway anymore, but I'm not ready for what's outside the owner's front door. So we need to take the dog to the car. We need to drive somewhere and we need to rehearse it. And if you don't take shortcuts, you will find the end result is, hey, we've got a dog that walks nicely on lead. It absolutely can happen. Every dog can do it if it's something that is important to you. That's it for loose lead walking. All right. Now, the final topic is, in my mind, still the most underutilized tool for creating happiness in a dog, creating calm behavior, and having flow-on effects to how we live with our dogs and how we work with our dogs and appreciate our dogs. And that is teaching our dog how to utilize their nose on cue. Okay, so 75% of what I do nowadays is working with detection dogs and detection dog handlers. And I believe that detection dogs are some of the happiest dogs in the world because the dogs see the world through their nose. You have a dog that you love or many dogs that you love, and you have never asked that dog to use that nose, you're only communicating with the dog on about 15% of the level that how it knows how to communicate with the world. Okay, just do me a favor. If you've never tried this before, the first exercise I want you to do, hold your dog by their chest, let them smell a treat, wave a treat under their nose, and throw it out of sight. Let the dog go as soon as the treat's out of sight and let the dog hunt out the treat utilizing their nose. If that's too easy for your dog, start to layer in distractions, start in distances away from the dog. Start to introduce some boxes, hide the treats in the boxes. Or you can start to go into something more complex, such as actually teaching them the concept of scent detection on cue. That is, when I say a word, I want you to find something. When you find that thing, you get your favorite reward. Or I might do something that a lot of dog handlers do, and I certainly do on a daily basis, is I get one of my dog's favorite toys and I go somewhere with perhaps a few physical barriers. So I've, circling back to one of our first things, I've taught my dog appreciation for some toys. My dog likes toys, and I will put the dog in a sit, ask it to stay, throw the toy, or go and run out of sight and hide the toy, and ask the dog to find that very specific toy. Around the house on a rainy day, this is one of the most fun, easy, engaging exercises you can do with your dog, because finding the treat is good. That's great. But it's a very black and white kind of lacking excitement sort of exercise. It's a pretty clear cut cognitive sort of process. You get them to find a toy and they parade it back to you and dance around with it in their mouth. It's one of the cutest and it's one of my favorite house is one of the most joyful activities I think you can do with any dog. So finding the toys, finding treats, and or finding something on cue. Now, if finding something on cue, such as finding your keys, finding your wallet, maybe you want to dabble in nose work. which is one of the fastest growing dog sports in the world right now, where you get the dog to find things like birch and star anise, or you want to find truffles or find your partner's pot stash or whatever it may be. You want to do something dodgy. We have an online course in teaching scent detection. Introduction, super easy stuff. Steve can send out a link to that as well. But even if you don't sign up for any of that, I still believe it is the most underutilized activity for dogs. There has been scientific papers written and published recently empirically proving the positive welfare benefits of detection on pet dogs. And anecdotally, and I've sat down with so many dog trainers, and we've thought about thousands and thousands of our clients, and we've sat around having a chat going, if it is quite simple to create happiness in a dog. If you played with your dog and you asked your dog to use its nose, those two things alone would probably have a flow-on effect of solving a huge amount of behavioral issues, which then makes separation anxiety so much easier to deal with because the dog's in a mental state of feeling powerful, feeling happy, and feeling calm, and makes loose lead walking now so because we don't have all this pent-up energy. We're learning skills. We're opening the brain up to learning new concepts and feeling good and having some form of impulse control through these exercises. So if you want to start, if you go, you know what, this all sounds a bit much, I just want to take the easiest take-home messages from Ryan tonight. Get your dog finding treats and or toys with its nose and start playing with toys with your dog. Get down and play with your dog. Get down on your hands and knees. When they bring the ball back, clap your hands, cuddle your dog, get your dog to chase you around, goof around with the dog. Okay? Now, if you want to know more about any of what we've just spoken about, we do have what we call, I'm reading my notes here, we do have what we call through our website, Ryan's Members Lounge, where I do a Zoom every month, just like this. 1 hour every month. It's usually a smaller group than this. We're having a sale for the next week on our annual membership. Okay, it's there's a massive discount at the moment. You'll receive an email on how to register for that. But there's hundreds of hours of content showing you with my dogs and other dogs how to train them to loose lead walk, how to get them to retrieve, muzzle training, place training, coming when called, you name it. There's videos on all of that if you want to go a little bit further in achieving a goal. All right, so a quick answer for something about a springer that won't toilet outside if the grass is wet. It's a very instinctive behavior for a 6-month-old springer bitch. It will go away with maturity, and as the weather starts to dry out, my best suggestion would be is for the meantime, either get some in like that. I can't remember the name of the company. There's a company that gives you turf that you can bring inside your house. So you teach the dog to pee on grass, like a little half a square meter patch of grass that you bring inside the house on those wet days, and teach her to pee on that, which if it is a more absorbent surface and it is indoors, I have no doubt she'll take to that. That'd be my suggestion. It'll be a great investment for you. I can't remember the name. It's a name like puppy grass, pea pad or something like that. Google it. It is real turf. You just have to put it outside from time to time. Yes, I did say female kelpie is not particularly food driven, which is the problem you have with loose lead walking. You use a ball instead. Look, I mean, the thing about utilizing a ball for loose lead walking is the ball is typically a high arousal tool, which means that whilst, yes, I can absolutely teach a dog to loose lead walk, the probability of reactivity whilst on lead to some stimulus is still quite high though. Whereas if I utilize food, I lower the arousal levels. So I don't know exactly why, but I think females are the most efficient running dog in Australia. They don't seem to need much food. They can cover huge kilometers. And I mean, Steve, who's on here, he had a wonderful bitch. And she would cover just as much Ks as all, just as many Ks as all the other dogs, and eat, a quarter, if that, of what the consumption of food they would eat, and still maintain wonderful condition. Sean, thank you. Legend, Fresh Patch. If that's Sean Pereira, I saw that you graduated from your dog training course. Congratulations. There you are, man. Good to see you, bro. All right, so I'm going to wrap that up there. There's some lovely comments popping up on here. I'm going to write them down. There is, for those of you who are interested in pursuing some of this stuff on a more professional level, or interested in the conservation space, we do have coming up a webinar on the conservation dogs as well, which is sort of the, when I do these when I travel around Australia and teaching workshops on weekends, it is usually about detection dogs or pet dogs with problems. And so, yeah, we've already got a few registrations for it. It was meant to be Thursday night this week. That I'm going to be sending out an email. Steve will be sending out an email shortly, because of this sort of emergency thing that we've had pop up now. I'm probably going to be flying from Brisbane down south Thursday, and it might end up being a bit tight. So we're probably going to move it to Monday, but we will send out an email and put a few reminders on the page about when we're doing the conservation one, which will more than likely be Monday night at 7:30. But and we'll record it, and if people want access to it, we can give people access to it. It's all free stuff. I'm not trying to get anything out of it, but if people like it and they want to join up to the courses on the site, the links are there. So thank you so much for joining. As I said, I thought maybe I'd get like 15, 20 people here. And then when Steve told me how many had registered, I was freaked out and humbled at the same time. So thank you everyone for joining. I still get nervous doing these things. I still love it. I still can't believe this is what I do for a living, and that people actually want to sit down and talk about dogs with me. I pinch myself every time I get to do something like this. So thank you so much. I get as much out of it as I hope some of you guys do. So take care. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully see you soon. Bye-bye.